Hey everybody, Doc Parsley here. I wanted to talk to you today about sleep and depression. So many of you have probably heard of major depressive syndrome, major depressive episode, major depressive disease, kind of all the same thing. And what that obviously means, as most people know, is that you have a decreased sensation of joy from anything. Even things that you usually love just don't bring you a whole lot of joy. Decreased mood, decreased affect just means you don't show emotion. Slower speech, slower movement, less energy, and something we call anhedonia, which is just basically lack of joy and excitement in your life. Nothing really gets you excited, and it's a pretty miserable way to go through life. Now, probably no surprise to you, I'm going to tell you that one of the major factors that we know is associated with depression is sleep. And there are several reasons for that, because depression isn't a simple thing. You may have heard of people using antidepressants, you may have heard of other treatments, and we'll talk a little bit about the basics about that. But what we know is that depression itself is a change in neurochemistry. But do we know, does something cause the depression that then changes the neurochemistry? Or is there the change in the neurochemistry that causes the depression and then causes other changes? And it's probably yes to all of those. It's probably a little bit of everything. So for example, most people have probably heard about serotonin, low serotonin levels, and we have something called SSRIs, which are drugs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which just means that it's increasing the amount of serotonin that's available to the neurons in your brain. And that's because we know that serotonin is correlated, low serotonin levels is correlated with increased risk for depression. So if we think about the physiology of sleep, when the light decreases in your eyes, when the blue light decreases in your eyes, it changes a bunch of neurochemistry in your brain. And one of the things that happens, sort of the starter pistol from the master clock gene, the SCN, or the nucleus is the master clock, the SCN. Through that pathway secretes something called melatonin. And melatonin, we know, is sort of like the starter pistol for getting your brain ready to go to sleep. What happens when you look at the chemistry, though, is melatonin comes from serotonin. So if you have some chronic sleep difficulties, chronic insomnia, or just quality of sleep issues, increased stress levels, whatever, and you need more melatonin, well, you start stripping your own brain serotonin to make more melatonin. And then you have lower serotonin levels, which has been associated with, as I said, depression, but also just getting short sleep, not getting enough sleep, and having poor quality of sleep has been shown to increase depression. And that's one of the mechanisms. Another thing we know is associated with depression is what we call neuroinflammation, which just means swelling of the neurons, swelling of the brain. And that is by and large because there's toxins built up in the brain. It could be from brain damage or brain trauma. It could be from contact sports or a car crash or things like that. It could be from a metabolic disorder, but usually it's just a buildup of toxins in your brain. And toxins is kind of a weird word to use, but it's fairly accurate. It's things that should be in your brain. That's normal sort of waste products building up in your brain. But then they get flushed out when you sleep. So if you don't sleep adequately, you don't flush those out, and then your immune system starts fighting them as some sort of waste product or toxin that's in the way. And when that happens, you start changing the neurochemistry in the brain, because you have different what we call signaling molecules coming in there, and that's basically changing the way the brain works. So having a chronically inflamed brain, or a brain that's full of toxins, which is therefore reacting sort of like it's inflamed, like it's been damaged, it's kind of the same as hitting your head, and that's been associated with depression. So just getting a concussion is associated with depression. Not sleeping well can lead to lower brain chemistry, changes in serotonin levels, can lead to brain inflammation, which all of those things are now associated with depression. Also oxidative pathways, which is a kind of like the inflammation. It's a slightly different pathway, but again, you're changing the neurochemistry. That's what antioxidants are about. That's the things, like vitamin E, I think vitamin C is considered an antioxidant, ubiquinol or CoQ10, things like that. You've heard of antioxidants. And then there's also a theory on what we call the gene clock. So part of that circadian rhythm, essentially, that changes what we call epigenetics, which is the expression of your genes. So what time of day, whether you're getting 8 quality hours of sleep or not, the gene expression can change by what time of day you're sleeping. So if you're sleeping at the wrong time of day, your gene clock expression, your sleep gene clock expression will be off. And that's been associated with depression. So of course, the way to re-regulate that is to sleep at the right time of day and sleep in entrainment with the sun. Another thing is just generalized stress. So as I talk about quite frequently, not getting enough sleep leads to an increase of stress hormones, and stress hormones can change your neurochemistry and they change a lot of your physiology, and those are associated, chronically elevated stress hormones is also associated with depression. And you can get rid of that by sleeping better. You can get rid of that by anything that decreases stress hormones. So things like meditation and yoga and Tai Chi and what do they call mindset training, breath work, aromatherapy. There's been shown many sort of incense and aromas from essential oils and candles and things like that that can affect your overall production of stress hormones. Lavender, I think, is the most powerful of all of those from the research I've read. And when you decrease your stress hormones, you also decrease your risk of depression. There's several other proposed mechanisms of what causes depression, called the etiology. So what is the exact etiology? We don't really know. But the one thing that we do know is that decreasing your overall stress levels throughout the day and when you're trying to go to sleep, and improving your sleep duration and quality, all decrease your risk of depression and improve your ability and the odds of you recovering from depression if you are in a depressive episode. So take that to heart and sleep well, my friends.